"Don't you dare touch my son. You have no right after what you did." Emily's words echoed through the emergency room hallway like a gunshot. The baby in her arms was burning up with a high fever, his tiny 6-month-old body shaking violently, but nothing mattered more than the man who had just walked through that door. The doctor froze, his face draining of color as he recognized her. It had been 15 months since they last saw each other, 15 months since he vanished without a trace, leaving her alone, pregnant and heartbroken. And now here he was in that damn white coat, pretending to be the savior when he had been her destruction. But what neither of them imagined was that this desperate midnight hour would be just the beginning of a truth that would change everything forever. Jacob's breathing was getting more labored. Emily clutched her son's burning little body to her chest, trying to absorb his fever with her love. It was 15 inches the morning. The thermometer read 103.6 degrees, and terror tore at her soul. The baby's little hands were scorching hot, his cheeks red as fire, and every whimper from that tiny mouth was a stab straight to Emily's heart. "Hold on, my sweet boy, hold on," she whispered with a trembling voice while frantically searching for her car keys. Jacob cried with that weak, hoarse cry that terrified any mother, a cry that said something was very wrong. Emily had tried everything over the last 3 hours. Cool cloths, a lukewarm bath, the fever reducer the pediatrician had prescribed last time. Nothing worked. The fever kept climbing like an unstoppable beast, and panic was consuming her alive. "God, please, please help me," she prayed as she rushed down the stairs with Jacob in her arms. Her own hands shook so badly she could barely get the key into the car door. Tears were already blurring her vision, but she couldn't afford to fall apart now. Her baby needed her strong. He needed her to stay calm, even though inside she was dying of fear. The early morning in New York City was unusually cold and quiet. The streets were nearly empty, mirroring Emily's desperation as she sped toward Mount Sinai Hospital, the closest one with a pediatric ER. Jacob wasn't even crying anymore, just making small whimpers that were even more terrifying than the cries. His little eyes were closed, eyelashes stuck together from sweating, lips dry and cracked. "Hang in there, my love. Just a little longer. Mummy's here. Nothing's going to happen to you," Emily repeated like a desperate mantra, but her own words sounded hollow even to her. Every red light was endless torture. Emily honked impatiently, looking both ways before running the reds. Nothing mattered but getting to the hospital. With one hand on the wheel, the other stroked Jacob's sweat-soaked head, feeling the heat radiating from his skin like he had coals inside. "Mummy won't let anything happen to you. I promise. You're my whole life, my reason for being," she whispered with a broken voice as tears streamed down her face. Since Jacob was born, everything had been for him. She worked double shifts at the advertising agency, did freelance gigs at night after the baby fell asleep, moved to a smaller apartment to save money, all to give her son the best, so he'd never want for anything, to somehow make up for growing up without a father. She screeched into the ER parking lot, jumped out of the car without even closing the door. Jacob pressed against her chest. The pediatric emergency entrance was dimly lit. A nurse on duty looked up immediately as Emily burst in like a hurricane, face contorted, baby in arms. "Please, help me. My baby's got a really high fever." "It won't go down. He's really bad," Emily shouted, her voice choked with panic. The words tumbled out desperately. "He's 6 months old. The fever started 3 hours ago, and it's almost 104 now. Please, do something." The nurse, a woman in her 50s with a kind but professional face, stood up right away and called over the intercom. "Doctor, pediatric emergency, baby with high fever, need immediate attention." Then she approached Emily with a reassuring expression. "Calm down, Mom. The doctor's coming. We're going to help your baby." But Emily couldn't calm down. Her heart was pounding so hard it felt like it would burst from her chest. She hugged Jacob, as if letting go meant losing him forever. The seconds stretched into eternity as she waited. Every moment, without medical care, was unbearable agony. Then the door opened, and Emily's world stopped cold. Ethan strode in with confident steps, his white coat spotless, stethoscope around his neck, that assured an authoritative presence he always had. But the instant his eyes met Emily's, everything changed. The doctor froze mid-stride, as if punched in the gut. Color drained from his face instantly. His brown eyes, those same eyes that once looked at her with infinite love, now wide with shock and surprise. Emily, the word escaped her lips like an incredulous whisper, almost a plea. Time stood still between them. 15 months. 15 months since that horrible night he left their apartment saying he was grabbing cigarettes and never came back. 15 months since he stopped answering calls, blocked all numbers, vanished from the earth, leaving her 2 months pregnant, terrified, and utterly alone. 15 months of sleepless nights, wondering what she'd done wrong, why she wasn't enough, how someone who claimed to love her could abandon her like that. And now he was here, facing her as if nothing had happened. Fury erupted in Emily like a volcano. All the pain, rage, humiliation of those 15 months condensed into one burning moment of pure hatred. "Don't you dare touch my son. You have no right," she hissed, voice laced with venom. She stepped back instinctively, clutching Jacob to her chest like a shield. "Call another doctor. Anyone but him." Ethan took a step forward, hands raised in surrender, but his face showed a whirlwind of emotions. Shock, pain, confusion, and something else Emily couldn't identify. "Emily, please, the baby needs urgent care. There's no other pediatrician on duty right now. Let me help him. Now you care about helping. Where were you when I needed you?" Tears of rage rolled down Emily's cheeks. "Where were you when I was alone and pregnant, dying of fear? Where were you when I gave birth alone in this same hospital, with no one to hold my hand?" The impact of those words hit Ethan like a physical slap. He staggered slightly, his eyes shifting to the baby Emily held, and then he really saw him. The fever-flushed face, yes, but also the features, the small square chin, the shape of the nose, the dark, slightly wavy hair matted to his forehead with sweat. A perfect miniature replica of himself. "How old is he?" The question came out shaky, loaded with painful hope and terrible realization. 6 months and 14 days, Emily replied sharply, each word like a sharpened knife. "Do the math, Ethan. You were good with numbers, right? 15 months since you vanished like a coward. 9 months of pregnancy. Is it clicking, or do I need to draw it for you?" The revelation crashed over Ethan like a collapsing building. A son. He had a son. All this time, while he was trapped in that hell, this baby had been growing, being born, existing without him. His legs nearly gave out. He had to lean against the wall to stay upright. "Emily, I didn't know. I swear I had no idea about this." Ethan's voice was strangled, desperate. He tried to approach, but she backed away further, eyes blazing with fury and pain. "If I'd known you were pregnant, I never would have." "Never what, Ethan? Never abandoned me." Emily laughed bitterly, a dry, broken sound with no joy. "Your promises mean nothing to me anymore. Now only Jacob matters. Only he matters." Ethan felt like his heart was being ripped from his chest hearing the name. Jacob. His son was named Jacob. The nurse interrupted the tense moment, approaching cautiously. "Doctor, the child really needs immediate attention. The fever's very high and he could be at risk." With every fiber of her being resisting, Emily finally nodded. Not for Ethan, but for her son, for Jacob, who whimpered weakly in her arms, burning with fever. "Fine, but I'm not leaving his side for a second." "I wouldn't expect anything less," Ethan replied, and there was something in his voice, a raw, deep emotion that made Emily glance at him for a moment. His eyes were glassy, hands trembling slightly as he approached. "Can I hold him to examine him?" Every maternal instinct in Emily screamed no, to keep her baby away from this man who had abandoned them. But Jacob needed urgent medical help, and as much as she hated it, Ethan was an excellent pediatrician. He had been when they met at that medical conference 3 years ago, when she was coordinating the event and he was the young star doctor giving talks on emergency pediatric medicine. With stiff movements, Emily handed Jacob over. The moment Ethan touched his son for the first time was devastating. His large, steady hands, those hands that had caressed Emily's face 1,000 times, now held the baby with infinite gentleness. A tear rolled down the doctor's cheek, impossible to hold back. "Hey, champ," Ethan whispered, voice breaking. I'm the doctor, and I'm going to make you feel better. I promise." He couldn't say Dad. He hadn't earned that title. Not yet. The next minutes were professional and mechanical on the surface, but inside Ethan was utterly shattered. Every time his stethoscope touched Jacob's small chest, every time he checked his throat, ears, palpated his abdomen, it was a revelation. This was his son, his blood, his responsibility, and he'd missed 6 full months of his life. He has a severe throat infection, Ethan explained in a controlled voice, though inside he was chaos. That's why the fever's so high. He needs IV antibiotics and constant monitoring for the next few hours. He turned to the nurse. Prep an observation room. I want him under watch all night. While the nurse hurried to set everything up, Ethan gave a stronger fever reducer and started the IV. Jacob cried when the needle pricked his delicate skin, and Emily had to bite her lip not to scream. Seeing her baby suffer was worse than any physical pain she could endure. "It's over, my sweet boy. It's over," Emily cooed, stroking Jacob's sweaty head. Her own tears fell onto the white sheets of the exam table. "I'm so sorry, champ." "I won't hurt you anymore," Ethan murmured. And there was such pain in his voice that even Emily, with all her hatred, felt something stir in her chest, but she crushed it immediately. She couldn't. She mustn't feel anything for this man who destroyed her. Once Jacob was stabilized, with the IV fluids and antibiotics flowing, they moved him to a small observation room. The baby finally fell asleep, exhausted from hours of suffering. His little face was still red, but the fever was slowly dropping. Emily sat in the chair by the hospital crib, not letting go of Jacob's hand for a second. Ethan stood by the door, not daring to leave, but not approaching too close either. The silence between them was thick, loaded with 15 months of absence, unanswered questions, unsheathed pain. "I need you to explain what happened," Emily said finally, without looking at him. Her voice was flat, empty of emotion. "You owe me at least that. Why did you disappear? Why did you do this to me?" Ethan closed his eyes, the weight of that horrible night crashing back full force. "My sister Danielle had a terrible car accident in Chicago," he began, and his voice cracked immediately. "I got the call at 11 at night, multi-car pile-up on the highway. She was in ICU, between life and death. The doctors said she probably wouldn't make it through the night." Emily listened, motionless, showing no expression. "I rushed to the airport, took the first flight out. It was all so fast, so chaotic. My phone died on the plane, and when I got to the hospital, Danielle was in emergency surgery. Multiple fractures, internal bleeding, head trauma. I spent 3 days without sleep, without eating, without leaving that damn hospital." Tears streamed down Ethan's face now. "And then, on the 4th day, when I could finally breathe because Danielle was stable, I got another call." He paused. The pain was so intense he could barely speak. "My mum had a massive heart attack when she heard about Danielle's condition. She was dead on arrival at the hospital. They couldn't do anything." Ethan's voice broke completely. "I lost my mum, Emily. I lost her while trying to save my sister, and in the middle of all that chaos, my phone fell and shattered. I lost all my contacts, all my photos, everything." Emily felt a lump in her throat, but she wouldn't let compassion soften her. There were still unanswered questions. "You had my address, you knew where I lived, you could have come back when it was over." Her voice remained hard, accusing. "My dad had a total nervous breakdown after losing Mum," Ethan continued. "He sank into such deep depression, he tried to end his life twice. I had to commit him to a psych ward in Boston. Danielle needed months of rehab after the surgeries. I was the only one left to take care of them both, handle the medical bills, the funeral, everything." He ran his hands through his hair in desperation. "I shuttled between Chicago and Boston for months, sleeping in hospital waiting rooms, selling assets to pay the bills. When I finally got a new phone and tried to find you on social media, you'd vanished. Your Facebook, Instagram, all gone. I called your old number and it was disconnected. I went to your apartment in Brooklyn when I could finally get back to New York 3 months ago, and the doorman said you'd moved out almost a year earlier. No one knew where." Emily remembered that time. She had indeed deleted all her social media in a fit of pain and anger. She couldn't stand seeing other happy couples, other babies with their dads. She'd changed her number to avoid calls from mutual friends asking about Ethan. She'd moved to a smaller place in Queens to save money, escaping the memories of that spot where they'd been happy. "I was pregnant and alone, Ethan," Emily whispered, and for the first time her voice showed real vulnerability. 2 months along when you disappeared. 2 months. I was still in shock from the news when I lost you. I thought you left because you didn't want to be a dad. God, no, never. Ethan stepped closer, eyes pleading. Emily, I wanted to marry you. I had the ring bought. I was waiting for the perfect moment to propose, and then everything went to hell in one night. Silence fell heavy between them. Jacob stirred a bit in his sleep, his little fists opening and closing. They both looked at him, that tiny being who was the product of a love that nearly destroyed itself. What was it like? Ethan asked in a barely audible voice. The pregnancy? The birth? Emily closed her eyes, the memories flooding back painfully. Horrible. I threw up all day for the first 4 months. Lost my job at the agency because I couldn't keep the hours. Had to move in with my Aunt Rose because I couldn't afford rent alone. She helped, but she was older, couldn't do much. Her voice grew weaker, more broken. The ultrasounds were awful, seeing Jacob grow inside me, hearing his little heartbeat, and having no one to share that miracle with. All the other women in the waiting room had their partners, their mums. I was alone. Ethan felt like knives were stabbing his chest with every word. The birth was an emergency. 32 hours of labor ended in a C-section. I woke up alone in recovery, no one waiting. The nurse brought Jacob wrapped in that blue hospital blanket, and all I could do was cry. Cry from joy at having him and cry from sadness because you weren't there to see it. Tears streamed down both their faces now. Forgive me, Ethan begged, voice shattered. I know I don't deserve it. I know I failed you at the most important time, but Emily, if I'd known, if I'd had even the slightest idea you were pregnant, I would have moved heaven and earth to be by your side. I would have brought Danielle and Dad here. I would have done whatever it took. But you didn't, Emily replied, wiping her tears angrily. And now it's too late. Jacob and I survived without you. We learned to be alone. We don't need you. He's my son. Ethan's voice came out firm for the first time, loaded with a determination Emily recognized. I understand if you hate me, if you never forgive me, but that boy is my blood, and he has a right to know his father. I have a right to be part of his life, even if it's the last thing I do. Emily looked into his eyes and saw something she didn't expect. Iron determination mixed with pure love. It wasn't a plea. It was a statement. Ethan wasn't disappearing this time. One chance, Emily said finally, her voice barely a sigh. I'm giving you one single chance to prove you won't vanish again. But if you fail me, if you fail Jacob, I swear to God you'll disappear from our lives forever, and this time I'll make sure it's legal. I won't fail you, Ethan promised. And there was such conviction in his words that even Emily, with all her pain and distrust, felt a spark of hope. I know this story has touched your heart as much as it did ours. If you've experienced a second chance at love or believe forgiveness can heal even the deepest wounds, share your experience in the comments. We want to hear your story. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, now's the perfect time. We have so many more stories that will move you, make you cry, and remind you that true love always finds its way back. The following days were a complicated dance between distrust and hope. Ethan showed up at Emily's apartment in Queens every day at 5 p.m. sharp, right after his hospital shift. He never came empty-handed, always bringing diapers, formula, age-appropriate toys for Jacob, and always a almond milk latte with cinnamon for Emily, just how she liked it. You don't have to do this, Emily would say each time, keeping her tone cool and distant, but Ethan just smiled sadly. I know, but I want to. The first visits were tense and awkward. Ethan sat on the floor of the small living room, surrounded by bright-colored toys, trying to catch Jacob's attention. The baby, with his big brown eyes identical to his father's, watched him with innocent curiosity, not understanding who this strange man was who appeared every day. Hey, champ, Ethan whispered softly, shaking a rattle in front of Jacob. Look, do you like this? When the baby finally reached out his chubby little hands for the toy, Ethan felt his heart explode with joy. That's it, Jacob. You're so smart, so perfect. Emily watched from the couch, arms crossed, jaw tight. She wanted to keep that wall of ice between them, that protective barrier she'd built with so much pain. But it was hard, terribly hard. Seeing Ethan interact with Jacob with such genuine tenderness, the way his eyes lit up every time the baby did anything from babbling to just grabbing his finger, the way he sang off-key nursery rhymes that made Jacob bubble with giggles, the infinite patience with which he cleaned up spit up without making a face like other men might. "He has your nose," Ethan commented one day in awe while watching Jacob, "and your lips, but he has my eyes and hair." "He's more yours than mine physically," Emily admitted reluctantly, "but he has my stubborn streak, like a mule." "That he definitely got from you," Ethan joked with a small smile. And for a brief instant, just a fleeting moment, Emily felt an echo of what they used to have, that ease in making her smile, that natural connection. But the moment passed quickly, and the walls rose again. Weeks turned into a month. Ethan never missed a single day, rain or shine. No matter how exhausted from 12-hour shifts at the hospital, he always arrived at 5 on the dot. Emily started noticing the little details she'd deliberately ignored before, the way Ethan brought things for her too, not just Jacob. One time he came with hand cream because he'd noticed her hands were chapped from washing bottles and baby clothes so much. Another time, multivitamins. "I know you're not pregnant anymore, but these help with general fatigue. You look worn out, Emily." "I don't need you taking care of me," she replied dryly, but took the vitamins anyway. "I know, but let me try." Jacob began reacting differently when Ethan arrived. His little eyes would light up, he'd wave his arms and legs excitedly, making those happy baby squeals. One afternoon, when Ethan walked in, Jacob let out such a loud, joyful shriek that both adults froze. I think he's happy to see me," Ethan murmured, eyes shining with emotion. "Don't get used to it," Emily said, but her voice lacked its usual edge. The truth was, she couldn't deny the obvious. Jacob loved his father, even without understanding who he really was. It was a Tuesday night when everything shifted. Emily woke startled at 3 a.m. to a different cry from Jacob. It wasn't the hunger or dirty diaper cry she knew well. It was a sharp, desperate cry of real pain. She ran to the crib and found Jacob's face bright red, legs pulled up to his stomach, crying with an intensity that terrified her. "What's wrong, my love? What hurts?" Emily's hands shook as she checked the baby. His belly was hard, swollen. Jacob screamed every time she touched it there. Panic hit her like an icy wave. Without thinking twice, she dialed Ethan's number. He answered on the second ring, voice alert despite the hour. "Emily, what's wrong?" "It's Jacob. He's crying so much. His belly's swollen and hard. I don't know what to do, Ethan. I'm so scared." Emily's voice broke into sobs. "I'm on my way, heading out now. Meanwhile, don't give him anything to eat or drink, okay? Nothing by mouth. I'll be there in 15 minutes. It was the longest 15 minutes of Emily's life. Jacob wouldn't stop crying, writhing in pain in her arms. "Please, baby, hold on. Daddy's coming. Daddy will help you," she whispered, rocking him gently. It was the first time she called Ethan Daddy out loud, even if just to soothe her son. Ethan arrived in record time, still in pajamas, medical bag in hand. The door was open as she'd promised. He entered like a whirlwind, but his movements nearing Jacob were gentle and precise. "Let me see him, sweetheart," he said to Emily, and she didn't question the endearment, just handed over the screaming baby. Ethan laid him carefully on the couch and started palpating. His expert fingers pressed softly on different belly areas while watching Jacob's reactions. "It's an intestinal obstruction," Ethan said gravely after a few minutes, "probably intussusception. We need to get him to the hospital now, Emily. He needs urgent surgery." Emily's world crumbled. "Surgery? But he's only 6 months. How will he—" "I'm operating on him," Ethan interrupted firmly, looking her straight in the eyes. "I'm a pediatric surgeon. It's what I do, and I swear on my life I'll save our son. Trust me, please." And in that moment, looking into his eyes, Emily realized something fundamental. She trusted him. Despite all the pain, all the abandonment, she trusted that Ethan would do anything to save Jacob, because that's what real parents do. The drive to the hospital was a blurry nightmare. Ethan drove his car with one hand, the other holding Jacob in the passenger seat while Emily hugged the baby from the back. In the ER, everything moved at breakneck speed. Ethan barked orders, requested imaging, prepped the OR. Emily signed consents with shaking hands, tears blurring her vision. "You won't take him from me, right?" she begged, as it was time to hand Jacob over for surgery. "Promise you'll bring him back." Ethan hugged her tightly for the first time in 15 months. I promise. I'll fight for him like I've never fought for anything. He's my son, Emily our son, and I'm not losing him. The next 3 hours were the longest, most torturous of Emily's existence. She paced the waiting room, praying to every saint she knew, and some she probably made up in her desperation. Aunt Rose arrived to keep her company, holding her as they both cried. When Ethan finally emerged from the OR, still in surgical scrubs with the mask dangling from his neck, Emily ran to him. "How is he? Please tell me he's okay." "He's okay," Ethan said, and he was crying too. "The surgery was successful. It was intussusception like I thought, but we fixed it in time. He'll need a few days to recover, but he's going to be just fine." Emily collapsed into his arms, sobbing with relief, and this time she didn't pull away. She clung to Ethan like he was her lifeline in a stormy ocean, because in that moment, that's exactly what he was. "Thank you," she whispered against his chest. "Thank you for saving him. Thank you for being here." "I'll always be here," Ethan replied, kissing her head. "For both of you, forever." The hospital days were eye-opening. Ethan didn't leave Jacob or Emily's side for a second unless absolutely necessary. He slept in an uncomfortable chair by the crib, took turns with Emily holding the baby when he cried, changed diapers, made bottles, and Emily watched him do all this with new clarity. This was the man she'd fallen in love with 3 years ago, the kind, dedicated man who put the people he loved above everything else. Circumstances had torn them apart. A terrible, unpredictable tragedy, but the core of who Ethan was had never changed. "I've been researching," Ethan said one night as they both watched over Jacob's sleep, "about custody, parental rights, all that." Emily tensed immediately. "Ethan, if you're thinking about—" "No, it's not that," he interrupted quickly. "I want to do it the right way. I want to legally acknowledge him, give him my last name if you're okay with it, set up formal support. Not because the law makes me, but because it's my responsibility. It's what I should have done from the start." "I don't need your money," Emily said proudly. "It's not about what you need, it's about what you deserve and what Jacob deserves. He deserves a father who contributes, who's present, who takes responsibility in every way possible." Ethan took her hand, lacing their fingers. "And you deserve not to carry everything alone. You deserve a partner, someone to share the load." Emily looked into his eyes for a long time. "What do you want from me, Ethan? What do you expect to happen here?" "I want another chance," he said simply, with brutal honesty. "Not just as Jacob's father, but with you. I want to get back what we lost. I want us to be a real family." "I don't know if I can trust like that again," Emily whispered, tears in her eyes. "You hurt me so much. I went through hell alone. I know. And I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you let me." Ethan wiped her tears tenderly. "I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking you to give me the chance to show you day by day that I'm the man you deserve, that I'll never disappear again." When Jacob was discharged a week later, something had fundamentally changed between Emily and Ethan. The ice walls had melted, not completely, but enough to let in light and warmth. Ethan helped carry things to the car, strapped the baby seat in with obsessive precision, drove with extreme care back to the apartment. "Do you want to stay?" Emily asked when they arrived, and both knew the question meant more than just that night. "Yes," Ethan answered without hesitation. "I want to stay." The following months were slow, deliberate rebuilding. Ethan officially moved into the apartment, though at first he slept on the couch, respecting Emily's space. They established routines together. He got up for Jacob's middle-of-the-night bottles. She made breakfast for the 3 of them. Weekends they went to Central Park. Ethan carried Jacob in a special baby carrier while they walked, pointing things out. "Look, champ, those are trees and those are squirrels. Someday we'll get one as a pet." "We're not getting a squirrel," Emily said, but she smiled as she said it. It was a sunny Sunday, 6 months after that hospital night, when Ethan made his move. Jacob, now a year old, was in his playpen with colorful blocks, babbling happily in his baby language. Ethan knelt in front of Emily in the living room. "What are you doing?" she asked, confused. From his pocket, Ethan pulled a velvet box, the same one he'd bought over 2 years ago when he planned to propose before the world went crazy. "This ring has been waiting to find its home for a long time," he said, voice full of emotion. "Emily, I know I haven't been perfect. I know I failed you when you needed me most, but these last months with you and Jacob have been the happiest of my whole life." Tears were already streaming down Emily's face. "I don't want to go another day without you two. I don't want to sleep on the couch pretending I don't die to hold you every night. I don't want to introduce myself as Jacob's dad when I want to be your husband, your partner, your family." He opened the box, revealing a simple but beautiful engagement ring. "Marry me, Emily. Let me spend the rest of my life proving you chose right. Let me be the husband you deserve and the father Jacob needs." "Yes," Emily said without doubt, her heart overflowing with love and hope. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Jacob, as if understanding the moment's importance, let out a joyful yell from his playpen and clapped his chubby hands. They both laughed through tears and rushed to hug him, the three of them together in a perfect family embrace. The wedding was intimate and beautiful. 6 months later, Jacob, now a year and a half, was the ring bearer, though technically Aunt Rose carried him down the aisle, since he was still learning to walk steadily. When Ethan kissed his bride, now wife, Jacob shouted, "Mama, Dada," with such excitement that the whole gathering laughed tenderly. 2 years later, Olivia was born on a sunny April morning. This time it was completely different. Ethan was there, holding Emily's hand through every contraction, wiping her brow, whispering encouragement. Jacob, now almost 4, waited eagerly in the waiting room with Grandma Rose, excited to meet his little sister. "We did it," Ethan whispered while holding newborn Olivia, with Jacob on his lap gazing in wonder at his sister. "We're a complete family." "We were always a family," Emily corrected, stroking Jacob's hair. "It just took us time to find each other again." Life settled into a beautiful, chaotic normal. Jacob was a protective big brother, always wanting to help with Olivia. Ethan thrived at the hospital, eventually becoming head of pediatrics, but never at his family's expense. He turned down lucrative offers abroad, opportunities that would advance his career but take him away from his family. "Do you ever regret it?" Emily asked one night, curled against him in their shared bed, turning down all those opportunities. "Never," Ethan replied without hesitation. That life wouldn't have Jacob yelling, "Dad, look," every 5 minutes. Wouldn't have Olivia clinging to my legs every time I try to leave for work. Wouldn't have you waiting for me every night with that smile that still makes me forget how to breathe. He kissed her softly. "This is all I ever wanted. This is real success." The years of pain transformed into deep gratitude. Jacob grew up knowing his parents loved each other deeply, that they'd overcome terrible obstacles to be together. Olivia grew up surrounded by love from her first breath, and Emily and Ethan built not just a family, but a living testament that true love can survive the worst storms. They learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, but choosing hope over pain. That second chances are precious gifts not to be wasted, and that a family isn't defined by how it starts, but by the strength with which its members choose to stay together, no matter what. On quiet nights, after tucking the kids in, Ethan and Emily sat on the balcony of their new home, hands entwined, watching the stars. "It was worth it," she'd always say. "All the pain, all the waiting was worth it for this." "It would always be worth finding you," Ethan would reply, kissing their laced fingers. "In this life and every one to come." And so, two people who nearly lost each other forever found their way back, proving that true love, the real, committed kind, always finds a way to survive, to heal, and to grow stronger than ever. This story reminds you that true love can overcome any obstacle, that families are built with patience, forgiveness, and unwavering commitment. If you were moved by Emily, Ethan, and Jacob's story, we invite you to subscribe to our channel. Here you'll find many more stories that will touch your heart and remind you there's always hope, even in the darkest moments. And now we'd love to know what city you're watching from. Write it in the comments. We want to see how far these stories we love sharing reach. Your comment brings us joy and motivates us to keep bringing you the best content. Until the next story.